My father was the chief personnel officer of the Crown Mines in Johannesburg. That's where I was born. And he was in charge of the employment of people, recruiting workers from outside South Africa. It was still called Bechuanaland now, which is this, Botswana, Malawi, Nyasaland was Nyasaland, and all that. And my mother started a school at home because she was a teacher when she was in the Eastern Cape. So when she joined my father to Crown Mines, she started a private school at home, first teaching family members. And then because she belonged to the Methodist Church, she used to talk about that. And the parents of those children brought their children to my mother's school until there was no space now in the home. And so the church offered my mother the use of the church in Fordsburg, the Methodist school in Fordsburg. So we used to walk from Crown Mines to Fordsburg every day with her and the family members became volunteers, were volunteers. None of them were paid. They did it voluntarily. And that's the kind of background I come from. All my family members in the Eastern Cape. My brother was a doctor, and my sisters were teachers, because at the time teaching was a noble profession and so on. So in that way, I was lucky to be brought up in that kind of home. And all the values and principles and all the political issues I used to listen when my parents used to discuss with their friends at home. Dr. Kuma was a friend of the family, and they used to talk about the ANC and so on. So that's how I grew up and was lucky enough to be privileged and compared. I left teaching because I was so depressed by the Bantu education system. And I say to myself, although we were separated, because apartheid had not been introduced then, but there was segregation. We had the same syllabus in schools. We worked, we wrote the same examinations, and we competed with our white counterparts to show them that the color of our skin, because you are black, doesn't mean we cannot achieve when we're given the chance. So I say to myself, now I'm here, and I was shocked by the curriculum of the Bantu education system. How stereotypic and demeaning to black people it was. And I was discouraged, and what we did to counter that kind of curriculum was to start a system whereby we could find a free time to address the students on the great people like Charlotte Maxeke. Would talk about Charlotte Maxeke, how she started, how she became a graduate, and her work with women. We talked about Professor Jabavu and all those people to show these children that despite what they say in this curriculum, they are great people, black people. And so we did that at our free time with these children until somebody just said, you're wasting your time because these children are going to be examined according to the curriculum. That despite this system of education, you are worthy and you can become somebody. And that's when we got involved now with SASO and those students who rebelled against the apartheid system. And I decided, no, this is not my field now. Let me go and do social work so that I can work with the women. And that's how I changed from teaching to become an activist for women, gender awareness, and talk about the system of the patriarchal system and how it undermines women and so on. My political consciousness was aroused at Fort Hare.
Tell us about that.
When I got to Fort Hare, I've been in the boarding schools of missionary schools like Hilltown, Kilnerton, where politics were not discussed, but people we met some people who were radical even at that time. And when I got to Fort Hare, that's when I could hear even the term protest, where people could protest and strike and have rallies. We were just talking about these issues, but at Fort Hare, instead of us talking about the syllabus and our degrees, the issues of the country became very important for the students. And so whenever a bill was passed, the students would just take over and protest against it. And that's how I got into the swing of it now. I think the fact that before apartheid, we had that kind of segregation where we still had some privileges that you could use, but we just did not feel that now when they brought it into law, then that's when we felt that the ANC was right to talk about violence, because all the talks that was made, non-passive resistance and petitions did not help. There were lots of petitions that were made and they didn't work. And because we had felt a bit of space, we could not bear now the tightening up of that space and losing it altogether. And the biggest thing for me was the separation of families, the breakdown of family life by the migratory system, where people were forced to go as migrants to the mines and leave their families behind to suffer. I got involved with that idea and I tried to convince her that even the TRC is going to do a lot for the people, because we were promised that when the people meet and talk about the things that were done, I mean, that we knew about apartheid. We knew about the atrocities of apartheid. We heard about them. But it was only during the TRC period when we could sense the extent of the cruelty, the lack of justice, and that our people suffered, the real stories. So I was not a commissioner of the TRC. I was in the committee of the Human Rights Committee for human rights violations, where we arranged hearings and people used to come and talk about their pain, what happened to their children, how their homes were raided, how their fathers were taken away, and they don't even know where their children were, and how they were tortured in prison, and all those stories. Very, very difficult. Because even for us who were getting out those stories, because the idea of the TRC was that we must know about those atrocities so that in the end they should never happen again. And hopefully those people will be brought to book. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. Even the reparations, they still owe people reparations even now. And it's a very sad thing about the TRC, because at that time we were very excited having this link with the people and encouraging them to talk about their anger, their wounds, and so on, and making them and feel at ease even to talk about them, because we knew that in the end, the result was that things would be fixed up. The people responsible for that, the security people and the officials, would be taken to court and so on.